So what I want to talk about today is applying the filters that are available to you in the markets that you're trading so that you have the best sense of what time cycles the institutions, the banks are following. And a lot of you, when you first get the software, you've been trained by the other vendors in the past that don't change anything. These are the settings, follow the signals, trade from A to B, and don't ever get involved with any of the black box, super secret, kernel's secret recipe parameters. And so what I'd like to do with you is walk you through this morning the operation of, I wouldn't call it optimizing, because I don't believe it's optimizing. Applying filtration to the time cycles we're studying with these Ninjatrader indicators. Okay, and most of you have already seen that we have two types of filters, and in every one of the sales webinars that you came to, you saw a histogram on the top and then a histogram on the bottom. And we did that for a number of years for no real particular reason. There's a lot of stuff that we do with the software that other than the fact we started out that way and we've always done it that way, there's no reason otherwise than what we did. And so the histogram on the top has traditionally been a MACD filter, and the histogram on the bottom has historically been a power zone filter. And one of the questions that I get asked a lot in the training classes and the sales webinars is, A, what's the difference? And then B, which one is more important? What's the difference between the top histogram and the bottom histogram? And which one is more important? And then C, probably a close third, would be, does the height of the histo matter? Does the height of the histogram matter? And so today I want to talk to you about the process of discovering the best filter for the market you're following using an A/B gladiator type analysis. Discovering the best filter for the market you're trading using an A/B gladiator type analysis. And so traditionally, if you went to get a pair of glasses, for example, those of you that are out there with me at the optometrist, they generally put you in a device that has hundreds of lenses, and they walk you through eyeglass test optometrist. Let me see if I can find a picture of it. They slide these lenses in and out. Here we go. They slide these lenses in and out, if you can see that right there. And they ask you, did it get better? Did it get worse? Did it get fuzzier? Did it stay the same? And they're changing focal lengths on the glasses. So what I want you to realize from this analogy is that there's a setting that's going to be fairly perfect for the market that we're following. That is to say, we want to start this exercise out with the belief that there is one set of histograms, maybe one, it may be two. There is one set of parameters for that histogram filter that when we finally get to it is going to yield superior results. We are going to have to pass through a bunch of substandard, almost perfect, but we think we can do better settings on the way to getting to the time cycle filter that is near perfect, near optimized. So let's outline how we get to that better than average, or what I call a TGTBT setting, a too good to be true setting. If you look here on my gold chart, I'm using what I believe to be a too good to be true setting in my gold futures analysis right now. And this is on a 1 minute chart. This right now is a 1 minute GCO 417 chart. Chris, I would disagree. Chris says the guy's vision keeps changing. I would disagree with that. In many of the markets I'm following, maybe some of the ones you're watching, it changes, but for me, it's fairly constant. And here, I've been using these settings now in gold futures now for months. With all of the scandals, all of the craziness in the new administration, and this is what I consider to be a too good to be true chart. TGTBT. And I say that because I'm finding the signals at most of the highs and lows. No, I understand, brother. Thank you. And so this is a picture of an ideal of what we want to see, what we want to go after. I have a very similar results on the crude futures charts that we've been following. And so many of the mornings that you're here, the workspaces that you're watching with me are a distillation of settings and parameters over months and weeks to get it to where it's just right. And I feel like even when it's off, it's not off terribly, and most of the time we had an accurate heads up. So how do we get to that point? And or how do I get you comfortable to stepping out of the constraints of not touching filters and looking for these kinds of things? Many of the filters that I'm using come from customers like Chris who've been courageous enough, maybe is a good word, to just start playing, or curious enough. And let me paraphrase what I'm about to do next with this. To find a too good to be true chart, one must approach the problem with curiosity, a childlike puzzle-solving mentality is another way to describe it, inquisitiveness, and D, a sense that there is no wrong answer. A sense that there is no wrong answer. We're exploring. So we want to approach the problem of discovering the time cycles for the banks and these moves that we're looking at. We want to preface it with the assumption there is a solution. It's there. That correct vision test, those correct lenses, they exist. We're going to find them. But if you don't approach it with a sense of curiosity, you're going to get really frustrated really quickly. If your goal is to get great results in 30 seconds or less, and you're going to come across some bad looking charts, then not having a sense of curiosity is going to place a lot of pressure on yourself, and you're going to find you'll either settle for suboptimal results, or you will get discouraged and be one of those people who says, can I have your settings? Can I have your charts? Can I read your notes? Having a childlike puzzle solving mentality when it comes to time cycles is incredibly profitable and useful, in the sense that that idea of approaching this like a game and working your way through the clues that are being left behind is incredibly rewarding. So many of you, I don't know if a lot of you are old enough for this. There used to be a video game called Oregon Trail. Any of you remember that? Oregon Trail video game. And it was horribly basic. And so it would leave you these little clues as you went. You are now at the Kansas River crossing. Would you like to look around? And so at every point in the game, which was, again, horribly basic, your ex-coach got us. See, these are all memes here. But as you went along, you got more and more information as you passed through, deeper and deeper into the game. You have to approach looking for time cycles that way. What am I looking at right now? What is wrong about what I'm seeing? What can I do? What options do I have available to me? And we'll talk about that in a second. And that leads to this inquisitiveness trait that I want everyone here to approach the software with. Have a sense of awe and wonder. Gann, W.D. Gann, William Delbert Gann, however you refer to him, had an inquisitive heart and mind. And he saw the universe, I believe, the way his contemporaries like Tesla and Einstein saw the universe. He approached the problem with awe and wonder. He invoked a lot of deism when it came to the markets. He believed that there was such a mathematical precision to the human behavior patterns in the market. It was on par with how the planets were moving in the solar system. There was a mathematical beauty to the markets. And so I imagine he would sit back and study these things like one would study a Da Vinci or a Michelangelo or a Monet or a Manet. He was in awe and wonder of the precision and craftsmanship of the natural order in the markets. And so it's important for you to develop that sense of inquisitiveness, that sense of awe and wonder when you're approaching what we're about to do here together. Because as one starts with a perhaps paint by number set from a local craft store in attempting to create beauty, we've got to start with some basic concepts and work our way into the more complex techniques of the art form. And that's really sort of what we're looking at here, an art form of analysis. And then D, I'm going to learn along the way. As you go and as you work with the software, you're going to discover that the exploration is worth the journey. There is a part of this, as we search for the time cycles, as we search using these Ninjatrader indicators, these TradeStation indicators, for the time cycles that the banks are following in the markets. We're pushing, and we don't know what we don't know. And so every time we work with a parameter, every time we work with a different filter, every time we change things around, we're learning to go to the next step. So in that sense, we are a Thomas Edison. We're not making light bulbs the wrong way. We're learning how not to make a light bulb. Okay? So what I want to do next is sort of lay our options out. So we're at the beginning, and I'm going to put an X here. This is the beginning, and this is where we want to be. So this is where we want to be, And this is a too good to be true chart where it just looks amazing. And much like the Oregon Trail analogy, the computer is sort of asking us, what do you want to do? What would you like to do? And so over here, these are the tools that we have available to us. We have the market data. We have a CCI filter. We have a stochastic filter. We have a double stochastic filter. We have a MACD filter. And we also have the power zone, or an SMA filter, available to us. Those are the tools. We have the ability to look at different time frames, and we have the ability to look at different markets. So these are the tools that we have available to us. This is a blank chart, and when we're finished, we will have seen what Chris is describing. You're looking at the source data in a different way, trying to find the rhythm of the data, resonance using different settings on your tools. We want to tune that piano string until it sounds perfect. If you've ever seen the way they tune a piano or a guitar, they use a tuning fork. They use a tuning fork. So he uses a tuning fork. Let me see if I can find him hitting that stupid thing. Oh, this is a tuning fork piano. But the guy uses that tuning fork, which when you have that tuning fork and you know that it's perfect, we're going to adjust the charts and the parameters to get to that point. So in this case, our tuning fork is a chart that we know looks good. So we can use a market like the NQ in this case, and we can say, wow, this is achievable. This is a good tuning fork. This is what I want my markets to look like when we're finished. And so let me walk you through the process that I go through when I'm starting with a brand new market. Now we have a veritable cornucopia to choose from. There are as many markets and things that we can go through here as any of us want to look at. And let us pick the Dow. I'm going to take the mini Dow, and I'm just going to start with a 5-minute chart. It's kind of a round number. A lot of customers, when I talk to them, they say they look at a 5-minute chart. And I'm going to load 2 weeks of historical data. Okay, and here it is. There's nothing magical about it. We had some information here last night, and overall, that's a chart. Market's in an uptrend. Yeehaw. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take away the session break line. I don't want anything on here that's going to influence me or break up my vision of what I'm seeing. Again, this is an art form. We want a blank slate. Think Apple. Think Mac. Steve Jobs clean when you're doing this. Don't load up your charts with a lot of extra stuff. Okay. Next thing we want to do is you want to come into your data series with the Ninjatrader indicators here, and you want to use a neutral color candle, and that's going to help us see the signals better. So for down bars, I usually pick a monochromatic color like gray. And here inside of Ninjatrader, we have the ability to change the up color bars as well. And so I usually pick something like a light blue. Here's a light steel blue. Okay, so we're choosing non-psychologically inducing colors. No more red and green, what I call a Christmas chart. Remember, our signals, the time cycle markers are red and green, or at least they are for me default. So you want those to pop. You want those to stand out when we compare them to this. So now we sort of have a almost naval theme, these blues and grays. And that's a great place to start out. And if you scrunch up the chart here, you see there's a lot of data involved where we can really start to look for some highs and lows, which is perfect. So in our quest to find a too good to be true chart, we want to identify what that would mean. And so what we're hoping to find are time cycle settings where we're seeing dots at these locations. Okay, and I'm just sort of generalizing what it is we're going to be looking for, right? It would be really great to have a chart that looked like that. It would be really great if we identified a leading histogram time cycle where the highs and lows were coming in these areas. That would sort of go a long way with some inverted signals, of course, but that would go a long way to helping us feel like we've accomplished something. So the first thing you need to do when you pull up a blank chart in the market that you're trading is visualize what a great setting would look like. What am I going to be happy with? How many settings or signals rather do I want to see? I worked with a new prospect a few weeks back, and he continually moved the goalposts. He asked to see the E-mini S&P settings on a 5-minute chart, and I provided him a too good to be true setting histogram for the next several days. Well, when I met back up with him 3 days later, he was not happy, and I had a hard time understanding why he wasn't happy. I perceived him to sort of have a disgruntled, angry face, right? And I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Well, you gave me too many signals. You gave me too many signals to work with, and I am not happy." I said, "Well, you asked for a 5-minute chart." And he was not happy with the signals from the 5-minute chart. And his response was, "There's too many signals. I'm sorry, Michael, but there's just too many signals and I can't use that many signals." So it's important to identify what would make you happy. What are you used to seeing where you're just like, yeehaw, that's the perfect number of signals. And so identify that early on. What's going to be your, yeah, that works for me. I'm absolutely thrilled with what you're giving me here. Because that'll be something we address here momentarily. Now, we are at the beginning of the Oregon Trail, and the computer is asking us, what would you like to do? Remember what tools are available to us. We have a MACD filter. We have a stochastic filter. We have a double stochastic filter. Those are CCI filters. And then down here we have the trend filter, the power zone, if you want to call it that, at our disposal in its own category, in its own class. So the process of getting from the beginning of this trail to the end is one of working through each one of these filters. And then once we're in the filter, adjusting the sensitivity of the filter to see if we can get it to be better or worse. So inside of every filter, once we're in here, we're going to have two options available to us. Option number one will be to make the indicator less sensitive. And then option number two would be to make the indicator more sensitive. So inside of each one of those filtration processes, we can break these out into that pattern of being more or less sensitive. So we really have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 2 for each of these. So 8 different experiments with the momentum filters. If you include the trend or the power zone, there are 10 different iterations that we're going to go through. There is the question of how much data to use. Historically, we only look at the last 2 weeks of data to garner a prediction for the next 5 trading days. There are some markets that more is better. But generally speaking, if you're using 2 or max 3 weeks of historical data in your max weeks parameter, you should be in the ballpark and close enough to get to your too good to be true chart. So that is an option that you can always employ. You can always change the number of weeks that you're looking back in the study. But for the most part, and for the case of this example, I'm going to assume that 2 weeks is okay. And we're going to work through this process of each filter, looking at more sensitive, less sensitive, and then sort of walking down the list and seeing which one is better or for worse. In fact, we're going to compare them. Once we have a really great setting for one, we're going to let it stand and let it do battle with the next one and see which one is better or worse. Does it make sense? Okay, let's go. So I'm going to clean off my screen. And I'm going to start with the MACD filter. And that comes under, in your Ninjatrader indicators list, the Flux library, FLUX. Keep scrolling until you see Flux time cycle markers. You'll see mine defaults to a MACD analysis type, which is fine. Now, inside of this parameter section, we have the ability to change a few things. When we're in the MACD analysis type, we're going to be referencing the MACD fast and the MACD slow settings. And I want to show you sort of from the slowest to the fastest what the sensitivity changes will do for us. Here we've got it set to a max weeks parameter of 2. It's not looking more than 2 weeks back. So we've got 15 days loaded with no holidays in there. So guaranteeing that we'll have sufficient data for the analysis. So right off the bat, I want to start with a big number. I'm going to do 2040. I have a MACD study with a MACD fast parameter value of 20 and a MACD parameter of 40. It's a pretty big number. And for the purposes of all of my experiments, contrary to what you've seen in other classes, I'm not using any filter. So here, my high peak, low peak setting is near 0. So I don't have any filter values. In pursuit of this too good to be true chart, I want to see where all of the time cycles are. You're not allowed to put 0, Brent. It will give you an error if you hit 0. It needs one value. That's a programmer quirk. So I make it near 0. Anything with 4 decimal places will encompass every imaginable histogram you can see. Okay, so I have that. And then down here, I have my marker labels turned on. The buy text position is set to below. The sell text position label is set to above. The label offset is 5. The marker label size is 8. The text label for the buy marker is the word time in lowercase letters with square brackets around it. And then I have my buy signal set to lawn green or lime green. I'm a big fan of lime green. I think it punches off the chart. And then the marker sell is set to red. I have my separation set to 3. 1, 2, 3. And so now here's the curiosity, the inquisitiveness. When we hit that, look what we've got. When you first hit that apply button, for me, there's a sense of joy. Wow. Did it work at all? Did it give us any relevant information? And you have to keep, in terms of sense of awe and wonder, one thing in perspective. This signal, and this signal, and this signal, and this signal, and these three are kind of okay. This signal are based off of 1 week old forecasts. And so, wow, I didn't expect it to show up anywhere. And as I go back in time, I'm looking to see if those signals were relevant. And they are. And you'll see here, Brent, that I'm finding dots in sort of the places I wanted to see them, with the locations that make sense. So we're starting off on a halfway decent journey here. Got a good foot underneath us. And so one of the things I can do is I'll start cutting that in half. I'll go to a 10/20. And cutting the value of the filters in half will increase the sensitivity of the filter. And we're wanting to see more and more and more dots. So I hit OK. I'll get rid of all of my drawing tools. And now, like a little kid, I'm wondering, did that make things better or worse or stay the same? And you'll see here when we started out, we were looking for highs and lows. And so one of the things I'm starting to notice is that, let's make this a darker color so we can see it. We caught a bottom here, a bottom here, a top there, and the 950 candle was off 1 bar from the top there. We caught the bottom at 136. We caught the end of the breakout session here at 335 where it closed above the red dot. We caught the bottom at 650, the high at 205, this breakout at 540, and the bottom at 630. So the MACD study appears to be in that okay setting, but it's not perfect yet. So I'm going to come back into here, and I'm going to change this to a 520, which is the default. That's what comes in the software when you first get it. And you'll see when I changed it to a 520, Chris, it alters the location of some of the signals, but adds more than it alters. And so in this case, I'm seeing now the low at 125. I'm seeing the low at 655. And now up here, things make more sense. I caught the high at 520. I caught the high at 355. I caught the high at 7 o'clock. Let's go ahead and blow it up. I caught the low at 7 o'clock, the high at 725. And then there was an econ here a moment ago. And you'll see the market stopped. Buying pressure took over for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars. So I'm in the ballpark. I have a lower low red dot, pattern 4. I have a higher high green dot, pattern 5. Straight out of our Guide to the Histograms book. And it'll help you in the beginning phases of your education with us to label those by hand, because it'll draw attention to it and your eye will become very sensitive to it. So a 520 has gotten us in a very rudimentary ballpark. This is pretty good. So that's why we include the 520 MACD in all of our histogram forecasts for the weekly sales webinars. We use these Ninjatrader indicators to generate the forecasts based off of a 520 MACD in the histograms we send out to our mailing list. This is just the beginning. Brent, at this point, okay, James says, Mike, your time base is 3. Chris, James, when we're using the time cycle markers or the histogram analysis, it will read whatever bar type we're using, as long as it's minute based. I could have this set to 15 minutes and it will still pull 15-minute cycles in. The base time frame is ignored unless I specifically want to lock it in, and we'll do that in a second. I can tell it to be a specific instrument and lock in a specific time frame. This is floating right now. It's not fixed. That's not really clearly defined in the rules or in the notes of the parameter. But if you leave it, it'll auto adjust to the right time frame. I like to break the indicators now. We have a pretty good sense of what's going on, but I like to break it. And so I'll come in here and I cut it in half again. I'll change it to a 2 and a 10. There's nothing magical about these numbers. They're just what I've been using over the years, and I get a sense of whether or not it's good just by experimenting and playing. And so now, when I did that, let's look at the 2 different days of data that we've got. So here's the Euro market open, basically somewhere around here. 8:40 would be London time right there, and here's current. So everything to the right of that blue line is live market action. And so again, filling in the pattern 4, there's a lower low red dot pattern right there. So that one worked. Boom, boom, boom. We found the low. It pushed up to the high. We found the low. We had a lower low red dot here, which is a pattern 4. We know that from our guidebooks. So we found another punctuated pivot point, which is good. When we're finding these points and we know what the patterns are, it's good. It means that the filter is doing its job. So I'll go ahead and put that there. 655 pushed up. 710, I'm off 1 bar. I'm comfortable with 1 bar being off. 805 was the low, and now 825, there's the econ. So James, I'm pretty happy with a 210 setting today for the MACD. Let's go back and look at yesterday in that same span of market time. Here's the US session from yesterday. Do we appear to have found a halfway decent setting for this market? There's the higher high here. I have a higher high there. I'm just filling in all of the 4 and 5 settings so that we're not cherry picking. I want to be consistent. There's the US session from yesterday, and we appear to be in the ballpark for most of it. And then going back into the Euro session, we caught the low at 535, the high at 610. It's not really a low, but it moved up a little bit at 710, down at 730, up at 75, and we caught the high at 835. So it appears that a 210 filter setting on the MACD for the YM on a 5-minute chart is pretty good. On a scale of horrible, good, pretty good, and too good to be true. We're sort of out the gate right here. And it only took us about 10 minutes to get to that point. If you wanted to fine-tune things even more, you could start to mess with this number. You could go from a 210 to a 29 and watch and see what the subtle shifts are. Go from a 2.9 to a 2.8 and look and see what, if any, the subtle shifts are. 2.8 to a 2.7. Does it help me or hurt me? And in this case, you see I actually picked up the low right here at 8:45. I picked up the low at 8:45 just now. But that 710 signal was still off by 1 bar. So we're in the ballpark with a pretty good setting at a 210. I'm going to go back and leave it there for now. If you want to really be silly, yeah, that's right, Barney. Make it a 1. Make it like a 1-2. Again, the curiosity of a child. A 1-2 is a little ridiculous. A 1-3, a little ridiculous. A 1-4, these are untradeable, right? And so, the curiosity of a child, what would happen if? Move the goalpost. Check it out. Increase and decrease the numbers. And see what your net result is. Okay. So I'm going to stick with the 210 for now because it seems to catch most of the highs and lows, and we know what those signals represent. If anything, I was super happy catching that green dot down below. So I'm going to keep going down until I get that green dot back. I wanted to see that green dot at the low just now. One more. 2.7, was that it? There it is. So by changing it from a 210 to a 2.7, spread your dots out so you can see them. By changing it from a 210 to a 2.7, we caught the green low just now. How does everybody feel at this point? Chris says maybe a 3 and a 7. Not too bad. We've kind of eked it up a little closer from pretty good, right? Just by changing it to a 2.7. So now we're going to keep this. We're going to keep this. It is our gladiator. And I'm just going to move it over like that and leave the settings the way they are. And there's an indicator in your tool set. Your Ninjatrader indicators shows it as the Flux screen print. Flux screen print. And what I'll do is I just want to make a note of what we found. This is a Flux AMACD 2.7 setting with 2 max weeks. I'm going to save this now, Chris, as a template. I'm going to put underscore Flux temp class. Underscore Flux temp class. And before I leave here, I'm going to put the histogram with the same settings as the MACD dot. MACD 2.7 with 2 max weeks. And so now I can see the times coming up. Now I see the times coming up in the future to the right. So if you're watching from home saying that was a great exercise, these are the signals coming up to the right that we'd be watching. Okay. Now, I'm going to open a new chart. Same market, same time frame. YM 5 minute 15 days of historical data. I'm going to load underscore Flux temp class, and you'll see it's the same settings as our chart to the left. Only now I'm going to explore a different filter value. Instead of a MACD, Chris, I'm going to look at a stochastic. And the default settings on the stochastics are 7 and 14. Take out the screen print for now. And so now here's what our signal looks like with a stochastic filter on the 5-minute chart, as opposed to a MACD filter on its counterpart just to the left. One of the things we see is that the red dot occurs on the correct side of this bump. It occurs on the correct side of that bump, which I like. I like that I didn't have any heat with a stochastic. If anything, I was a bar or two on the other side of the mountain. So that's a pretty good sign. Now that I'm in the stochastic envelope, I can come over here, Chris, and I can start adjusting things. And one of the values that I found worked really well, thanks to Chris, is a 5.7. Okay, just whittling down. And if I hit 5.7, now I've got that red dot almost at the very high at 720. In fact, it's one bar over to the right at 725. If I want to make it even more sensitive, and we have, a higher high green dot, pattern 5, just to the left, which is sweet. So in comparison, which one of these charts is starting to emerge as preferable? There is a lower low red dot, pattern 4 signal right here as well. Do you guys notice that there's a difference in the way the dots are forming? Do you see how maybe one of them is more appealing to your eye as opposed to the other? That's what I want you to start to, again, we're like art connoisseurs now. We know what looks good. And so with the stochastic, I have the freedom now to start to push things down. I'll go from a 5.7 to a 4.6. From a 5.7 to a 4.6. It's okay. I added a few more dots in there. In fact, the one at 9 o'clock here on the right is there. And now I caught the high at 720. Ding! There's also a low at 425, a lower low red dot. So over here, this is a pattern 4, right out of our Guide to the Histograms handbook. All three of these are lower lows. And so that would be a lower low red dot. Now, as far, the lowest I've ever taken a stochastic is where Chris has told me to take it. That's a 3.5. Let's get rid of all of the drawing tools. And now we have a 3.5 stochastic signal on this chart starting at 3.05. There's 3.10, so we'll start it around the 4 o'clock mark. And so you'll see there's a difference going from the one to the other. And there's a difference in the way a stochastic presents the signals as opposed to the way the MACD presents the signals. It appears to be more punctuated. The stochastic on the YM appears to place the signals at the correct pivot points more often than not. 620 is a lower low red dot. Pattern 4 signal. So when I look at these two, I ask myself which one is helping me or which one is helping me more than the other. And when I stretch this one out, pull up the candles a little bit, there appears to be a clear winner between the two. there appears to be a clear winner between the two. And I'm just filling in the pattern 4s and 5s here real quick. So the stochastic with a 3-5 on a 5-minute chart is giving me signals at almost every one of the pivots. It's giving me signals at almost every one of the pivots, at least half of them. And I'm seeing the kinds of reactions I want to see. The next phase is to break the indicator. Kids have no sense of how far to push things, and I don't want you to have it either. Make the numbers smaller. And Gary, do you see what happened when I did that? Everything shifted around a little bit, but did it shift around and get really bad? Or did it maybe improve a little bit? I am mad that I lost my high at 720. That's the one I wanted to see. Okay, but once you're close, start to experiment. Start to try different values and see. Did it get better? Did it get worse? Did it stay the same? 3-5, break it. 3-4. 3-4 is I thought 3-3. 3-2. 3-3 is almost too much. But look what happens at a 3-3. We catch almost every single high and low. You guys see that? And we're off 1 bar right here, where 715 should have been the high. So a stochastic appears to be the winner with regards to the battle of the filters between the two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dismiss the MACD study. And this gladiator stays behind in the ring for us to use. You'll note that the chart behind this one that I keep looking at is a stochastic with a 5-7 value on the NQ. And the stochastic with a 5-7 value on the NQ. Gary, do you see how almost every one of those signals are spot on? They're trustable. They're yummy. You see it and go, ooh, what? Michael, send me those values, right? That's how I know when I'm in the ballpark, because people ask me for those settings when I'm there. Now, if you're the guy, like that prospect the other week who said, Michael, there's too many signals, you know what options you have. You can use that same value here as the NQ. You can change it to a 5-7. And we still have most of them. We're still in a pretty good ballpark. But for the sake of this discussion, we're going to leave it at a 3-3 or a 3-5 and let the stochastic stay here while we look at other signals. Okay, so we'll leave it on the 3-3. And we'll continue. Any questions so far where we're at? Any confusion? Anything that I should have discussed that I didn't discuss? So we have a 3-3 stochastic. I'm going to put that histogram on here now. Flux histograms. Stochastic. 3-3. And if that's too many, you can always back it down. Back it on up. So we have the times. And now we're perusing out into the future. Understood, Chris. we're presenting that source data differently. I understand your point. Okay, so stochastic seems to be really good for the YM on a 5-minute chart. It's working on our NQ chart. Now, we still have other filters available to us, right? We've looked at the MACD, we've looked at the stochastic. Let's look at the double stochastic. So I'm going to open a new chart. Hang on one second. I'm going to open a new chart. File, new chart. YM. And 5-minute, 15 days. We'll load the same template that we were using before. Underscore flux temp class. There she is. This was the MACD study we did a moment ago. And now we're going to change it to a double stochastic. And you wouldn't think that it had that much of a difference. But looking at the Euro session into the US session right now, Gary, how do we feel just about the default values of the double stoke? Does it feel like we're in the okay to good area? Worth pushing further? Sure. So we'll come back in, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it to the value that I knew was working well for the stochastic. I'm going to go right to the 5.7. And when I go to the 5.7, that's not too bad. In fact, it looks very similar to the stochastic that we were studying just a moment ago. So now we do the A/B test. The gladiators are going to fight, and we want to see which one comes out of Thunderdome alive. And so double stochastic on the right, stochastic on the left, and I'll put in my pattern 4s and 5s, lower low red dot, higher high green dot. And that's where we're at right here. Double stochastic appears to have some chops to it. One of the things I like about it, the only one that's off, again, gosh darn it, is this guy right here at 7:15. But at 8:25, Derek, do you see how we caught the econ? There's nothing here between this triple bottom at 9:15 that just came up and the releasing of the hounds, the selling pressure hounds at 8:25. So this one appears to have as much merit as the stochastic chart does. In fact, it looks pretty groovy here when we open it up, Gary. And we can shrink up the candles to see the dots a little better. So I'm a little more excited than I was a moment ago with the stochastic, which was a little more exciting than it was with the MACD, because things are in focus, or at least for me they appear to be in focus. So I'm going to take the indicator now, and I'm just going to start to whittle it down. Here's a 4.7. Didn't really change too much. I'm going to change it to a 4.6. I'm just shaving the edges. Okay, now when I changed it to a 4.6, I got this new signal here at 8:55. So it added two little signals in here, which on our chart would look like chop, right? And that's kind of what we're seeing in here, a little choppy section. We'll go now to a 3.6. A 3.6 didn't alter anything. And I'll change it to a 3.5 like we had before on the stochastic. And this changed a few things. Number one, we have a higher high green dot over at 335. That's the Asian market. Number 2, we have 3 selling pressure signals, one at 8 o'clock, one at 8:25, and one at 8:55. So we went from a 7.14 to a 5.7 to a 4.6 to a 3.5. And when we compare the two together and A-B them, it appears that the double stochastic on the YM is faring slightly better than this stochastic on the left. So I'm going to use my global crosshair now, which is a really handy feature in Ninjatrader with this indicator. And I want you to see what I mean by the differences. So Gary, over here on the right hand side, the 9:15 signal is clearly an exhaustion signal. It's starting to form a morning star pattern right here. And it's the lowest of the 3 candles. But the stochastic signal on the left, Gary, you see how it's off 1 bar to 8:10? They both have the signal at 8:40. Only this one has the drop before the report closer to the candle at 8:25. It also has this signal up here at 8 o'clock. They're very subtle differences, right? We seem to be splitting hairs between the two. But in terms of what I like, for example, I'm seeing the green dot on the left side. There is no matrix pattern 4 lower low red dot at 425. But on the right chart there is. And we still have that green signal. Both of them have the doji candle up here. And this is a really important part of the process that I'm describing to you. Because when you're splitting hairs like this, it means you're super, super close. When you're going, well, this one was off 1 bar, this one was off 1 bar, and you start to learn which one is, the behavior patterns of each different signal. What does the stochastic tend to do as opposed to the MACD? What does the double stochastic do as opposed to the stochastic? And so on. And so here we're really splitting hairs. But over here on the right, again, the green dot at 6:55 is in the right spot. In the chart on the left, it's in the wrong spot. It's off 2 bars. So guess what we get to do? We get to declare a winner in Thunderdome. And I'm going to move this jamoke over here. We're going to bring in a histogram for it, a 3.5 double stochastic Flux histogram Ninjatrader indicator. 3.5. Hit OK. So now we have the signals. Maybe too many for you, but you know how to whittle those down. But we also have the signals coming up to the right. And there should be a pretty close correlation now between what we're expecting to see and what actually happens. Again, if there are too many signals for you on this chart, that's fine. You know how to reduce it and get it down, but you also know we're working with the right tool, right? If we go back and look at how the NQ signal is performing, Gary, do you see how the stochastic has been sort of kicking rear end and taking names over there? When you lock it in, the forward test should reveal the same results as the backwards test. So while it looks really good over here on the 5-minute chart now, we really want to see once it gets to the next 3 or 4 signals in the future, if that holds water, if it maintains that accuracy that we saw. Okay? So over here, we've got a 3-5 double stochastic. I'm going to come over now and I'm going to look at the one filter left. 3-5. I'm going to change it to a CCI. And the CCI period is set to 30. CCI is set to 30. And I'm going to get rid of the drawing tools. Same exercise. This is the 8th time we've done this, or the 4th time we've done it. Okay. So Gary, first impressions. I look at this and go, okay, we caught the high. It dropped down here. We almost caught the perfect low, and then it dropped down. Brent, good question. Hold the thought. I'm going to take the CCI value now and I'm going to start to reduce it. We're going to boil it down to a 25. Let's lower the histogram so we've got that to work with. There's a 25. Let's go a little lower to a 20. There's a 20. It's starting to get jumbly. It's showing us some choppy sections here. Let's take it down to a 15. Let's just break it. Go. How low can you go? 15 doesn't suck, does it? Again, the elusive 715 dot. It mocks me. So a 15 period CCI on a YM 5-minute chart seems to be getting her done. Okay, so I'm in the ballpark. That part of my childlike curiosity is being appeased and satisfied. I'm going to pull open both charts here, starting at 8 o'clock, and go, all right, let's start splitting hairs. I'll go from a 15 to a 12. Just pulling numbers out of my arse right now. A 12 to a 10. Shaving it down, shaving it down. Didn't help. A 10 to 8. Now they're starting to look alike. 8 o'clock, 8:25, 8:40, 8:55, 9 o'clock, 9:15. And now, Gary, that 9:25 just showed up. And there's no signal on the YM until 9:45. Interesting. So the CCI over here is getting it done, as well as the double stochastic. Here's my lower low red dot. I have one over there. I have one over here. There are no higher high green dots that I can see. There's one right there. Sorry. Previous swing high, higher high green dot right there. So in a head-to-head competition, that was an 8. The double stochastic and the CCI, today at least, are doing pretty good for the YM on a 5-minute chart, with the elusive 710 indicator below. Now, Brent had a good question. He said, would there be any benefit to using 2 histograms? Can you put the MACD and can you put the stochastic and the CCI on the same chart? Brent, yes. The short answer to your question is yes. There is one study that I almost always recommend people put on another chart, and I'm not sure we're going to have time to go into that today as we're getting pretty close to the open. So here we've kind of walked through all of them so far. I'm going to stick with the stochastic because I've been using it on other markets and it's working really well. And we'll continue to follow that moving forward. Any questions about anything we're seeing here right now? How we got to this point and why it's important. It's okay to come into these values and try these things and move and finagle things around. Okay, what I'm going to do over here, Dave says, will this be true in higher volumes? Early morning is low volume. Well, Dave, remember how when we started out we were looking at previous sessions too? Here's the London session, and it's catching the highs and the lows. If we go back and look at yesterday, this is a higher volume session yesterday. Dave, how did it perform yesterday in a higher volume session? No, not good. Say it with me. Too good to be true. Every signal on this chart is based off of a 1-week-old forecast. Chris notes, use the same settings that you find work on different time charts. They still work. So, Dave, Chris wants you to know, if you find that the 3.5 works good or the 3.3 works good on one market, use it on a 60-minute time frame. Use it on a 10-minute time frame. Use it on the pound dollar. Use it on coffee. Use it on the ZN or ZB, the notes or the bonds. What you'll start to find in your exploration of this software is that there are certain settings, certain filters that catch the moves really well, and they work on different time frames. So if I change this now to a 15-minute chart, Dave T, do you see how the signals really didn't change? The accuracy is sort of the same. You can go all the way out now to a 60. And Dave, do you see the results are the same? So in conclusion, work through the settings, work through the filters, A/B them as you go through. You'll begin to identify the filter values that work across a wide range of markets, a wide range of time frames, and you'll take note of them. You'll have your favorites. And a lot of my favorites came from customers. A lot of my favorites I figured out that I like. And eventually, you're going to reach a point where you have the right number of signals on the chart. You'll see that it's working going forward. We've been watching this NQ chart for the last hour and a half, and we knew that 932 was coming. Look at what happened at 932. We know that 937 is coming, 947, 10 o'clock, and 10:11. And so it was reliable back here when we were watching it all play out live, and it's forward testing reliable now. These are all good things. So the heart of the matter, when we go back to when we were studying this Oregon Trail method of finding the time cycles, work your way through each of the values. Identify the ones that are working good. Make notes which ones are doing really well. And then start to keep a catalog. because these represent sort of these resonant piano tuning forks. We can apply a 5/7 stochastic or D-stoke. We can apply a 3/5 stochastic or D-stoke. We can apply a 210 MACD. We can apply a 9 or 8 CCI. And we know that if we apply any of those to any time frame, we should be close, if not right at, a too good to be true chart. And if you don't see that with these, then we'll look at, on Friday, I'll record another class on how to use intra-market analysis or inter-market analysis. But as of right now, I just want to show you what to do with these basic filter settings that we've got. You would do the same thing with a power zone if you wanted to add that. If it gave you more pivots, if it gave you more accuracy, put that on your chart as well. But if it doesn't, leave it off. There's no reason for it to be on there if it's not adding to the accuracy and adding to your confidence, adding to the resonance of the time cycles, using these Ninjatrader TradeStation indicators on the chart. Okay? So good lesson. We're going to work with this. This is phase 1. The next class will be inter-market analysis. Inter-market analysis, where we look at signals from other markets on top of the current markets. And then we're going to look at horizontal analyses using the Flux flashback histograms and the Flux flashback time cycle markers. Chris says, by the way, those of you that want to know, if you're going to use the power zone, Chris says to use a 21. So if you're watching this video and you're conducting your own experiments, Chris says when you test the power zone, use a 21. Or, I'm passing all the info on, Chris, or a 55. A 21 or a 55. Good notes. So thanks, everyone. We'll get this video wrapped up, uploaded to the YouTube channel, and I'll send out a notice later so that you can go back and watch it and try your own experiments.